Our next storyteller is Staff Sergeant Holden Montgomery. And if anybody's been deployed before, it can be very difficult. Some of us are deployed. Thanks so much. Some of us deployed and experienced some pretty amazing things. Some very bad experiences, some very good experiences. Today's Sergeant Holden is going to share with us his self-discovery about his experiences and some things that he had to deal with. I appreciate you sharing that with us. It's very important for all of us. Thank you.
All right, so my story begins with when I deployed to Kandahar, Afghanistan from March 26th of 2010 until October 8th of 2010. While I was there, we had a total of 86 rocket attacks. I remember the first rocket attack, I was at the boardwalk there at Kandahar and siren went off and I freaked out, hoping that it wouldn't land near me and hit the dirt, and just hoped and prayed that it wouldn't land near the boardwalk or anything. But then eventually, as one turned into two kind of turned into more or less 10 to 20, the fear started to wear off and it kind of turned to more indifference, and the indifference turned more into anger towards the terrorists that were launching these rockets. And I tended to think, well, why don't these guys just blow themselves up in their caves and leave us the heck alone instead of wasting our time. While I was there, we also had 2 ground attacks at Kandahar. It was definitely unusual than the other rocket attacks because there was 2 rockets that came in simultaneously, so before the one siren stopped, the other one kicked off. So I knew that there was something going on. So I went down to the bunker with all the other individuals and hoping that maybe this was just an unusual one and be able to go back to our rooms in about 5 or 10 minutes. But then we had a couple more that happened, and then eventually they told us that we had to put on our body armor. So I went up to my room to put on my body armor, and all the other people who worked for Army guys were a lot more proficient at putting on their body armor than I was. And I ended up being the last one back to the bunker, and so I was kind of trapped in the entranceway of the bunker, so I was still protected by the concrete wall, but I was still partially exposed so I could see everything that was going on. The first ground attack lasted 6 hours, and it only ended up feeling like half an hour because my adrenaline was pumping for so long. But initially I was afraid that I might have to shoot and take somebody's life. But then after a couple hours they told us that we had to put a magazine in our M16 in case we did get overran somehow. And the fear turned into indifference, and then the indifference turned to a longing to defend myself and to defend the other people that were in the bunker along with me. And like it was my job to actually fight off these terrorists that they came close enough that I had to fight them off. The second one, luckily lasted only 3 hours, but it was the exact same way. I was the last one to the bunker, so it was about a total of 8 hours that I was on guard, looking for anything and everything. There was also what they called beyond the lookouts, which we always called bolos, which was there's always like some kind of contractor that ended up getting fired and disappeared, or there's even one where I had these little cans of energy drink called Rippets, and we had actually caught some contractors throwing them against the different buildings and stuff, trying to break them open just enough that they'd be able to insert some poison into the Rippets without anybody knowing it. So it was like, we're always on the lookout for these rogue individuals, and then you also had to be careful of what you consume too, because you never knew who was trying to hurt you. We also had lots of Afghanis on base too, because they wanted to provide them with some source of money so they had them taking out the trash and stuff. And there's more than one occasion where I found some Afghanis dumpster diving, and there was one guy that pulled out a pair of boots took off the boots that he was wearing with a hole through the sole, threw those into the dumpster, and put on the DCU boots that he pulled out of the dumpster. And during the ground attacks, the terrorists that attacked the base were actually wearing the Army ACU uniform, so you knew that the Afghans that were working on base were more or less supplying stuff to the terrorists. You never knew who you could trust and who you couldn't if they weren't wearing a uniform. Even then, it was iffy. I also attended 4 ramp ceremonies where we honored the individuals that lost their lives as they were loaded onto the plane to come home. I only could bring myself to attend 4 because after the 4th one, I knew that if I attended another one, I would just end up losing all control of my emotions and break down. And I ended up subconsciously building an emotional wall to protect myself from feeling emotions, because I always thought that if I let my emotions out while I was deployed, then I wouldn't be an effective individual. So it was a pretty well normal deployment. I was a computer systems administrator for the 777 Expeditionary Front B Squadron, doing that stuff. And we were finally about to go home, and we were so excited to be going home. The C-17 was right there as we were walking towards the C-17, and a medical Black Hawk came flying in, and I was curious as to what happened. Obviously, it's a medical Black Hawk, so somebody was medevaced to Kandahar. But part of my curiosity just held on to, kind of like the whole saying, curiosity killed the cat. And I noticed that the individuals just kind of casually walked out to the Black Hawk. And I thought it was really weird that they wouldn't be rushing out to try and save somebody's life. And they, as they pulled out the individual on the stretcher, they were covered in one of those dark green wool blankets from head to toe. So I thought it was kind of weird that they weren't have the individual in a body bag, but assumed that it was KIA, which I felt some sympathy that the individual lost their life. But then it was like a scene out of the movies that part of the prop blast blew back part of the blanket, and I saw a hand hanging off the stretcher, and it was just covered in blood, and I could feel all the joy and happiness leaving my body, and I felt like I'd never be happy again. I tried to push that memory and all the other stuff from my deployment out of my head as much as I could, because when I saw my girlfriend at the time at the airport, as she was going to take me home, and I remember as we were driving down the highway, the speed limit at Kandahar was only like 15 kilometers an hour, so it's only roughly 7 miles an hour. And you go from going 7 miles an hour for 6 months, going to 65, driving down the highway. I felt like I was going to die the whole way home. I even told my wife, we're going way too fast. She's like, no, this is the speed limit. I was like, are you sure? I feel like I'm going to die. But after I got home, they lost my bags in the process of coming home, so I had to go to Walmart and get some of the basic essentials like a new toothbrush and toothpaste. And at the BX at Kandahar, they had a whole aisle for any kind of hygiene product you need the whole 6 months while you're there. And to go from one aisle of everything hygiene to one aisle of nothing but toothpaste, and then a whole aisle of nothing but toothbrushes, I just felt like sitting down in the middle aisle and crying because I felt so overwhelmed by trying to pick out what toothbrush and toothpaste to use. One other, probably about the first mistake that I made when I came back was she was now my fiance, decided to convince me to go Black Friday shopping with her because it'd be fun to saddle the crowds and get all the sales and stuff. And I was overwhelmed the whole time and overstimulated. There's people always bumping up against me, and I just felt angry and wanted to get out of there. And but tried to push that memory behind me. And then about 4 months after I got back, I tend to call it the place I was living in because I never really want to actually associate it with my home, but the place I was living in got broken into twice in the same week. They completely ransacked the house, and I initially thought that maybe some animals managed to maybe I left the door unlocked and they got in and destroyed everything and telling us that the TV was missing and the back door was kicked in. They managed to chisel through the fireproof safe I had through the lid with a kitchen knife. I secretly hoped and wanted to get revenge on the people that broke into my house, but I never actually saw them as an American that broke into my house. I always saw them as an Afghani in their traditional clothes. The cops said that they didn't expect to catch him because they couldn't find any fingerprints, and all of the serial numbers of stuff that I had was on some hard drives that they had stolen. So then the issue of trust came back because when I was deployed, you didn't know who to trust and who you couldn't trust. And then it felt like the cops failed me by telling me that they didn't expect to find who broke in. So it's like, I can't even trust these police to protect and serve like they're supposed to. I'm not safe anywhere. So that's when all the stuff started. It was like all the stuff from my deployment and break-in stuff kind of combined into one big ball of emotional mess that I couldn't handle. I ended up being very angry and hateful all the time when I wasn't numb. And that emotional wall came up. I had a hard time connecting with my fiance, Allie, and anybody that I knew. Unfortunately, I ended up pushing my fiance away, and she moved up to New Hampshire to live with her mom for a while. I ended up going out with friends just about every Friday night to go drinking just so I could feel any kind of positive emotion. There's one night that I had, I'm not quite sure the exact count, it's still pretty fuzzy, but I'm thinking I had probably about 10 shots within a 2-hour period along with other drinks that night. And then there's a voice in the back of my head that I'm convinced it was God telling me that this problem is getting out of control and that I need more help than what I can provide for myself. I went to mental health the next Monday, and they told me that I had adjustment disorder with PTSD symptoms, and that they were going to refer me to Fort Jackson to the behavioral health specialist there because they had more experience with PTSD symptoms and all that. I was then diagnosed with PTSD at Fort Jackson and began working through the different issues of trust and breaking down that emotional wall, which luckily I managed to do just before my son Josiah was born. And I drove up to New Hampshire to see him and his mom Allie, and we managed to patch things up, and we got married December 28th of 2011, which I'm so glad she managed to stick with me through all the craziness I put her through. I was feeling real as normal as I knew what normal was anymore. So I ended up stopped feeling counseling, but one of the things that helped me the most was my faith in God and reading my Bible and going to church. I always knew growing up that I had a good, strong foundation in my faith that could take me through anything and managed to get me through that mess. I then PCS'd here to the headquarters at AFB, and my son Eli was born June 13th of 2013. He's, what a cute little guy, but of course the stress of being at a headquarters, and I put on staff on January 13th when I first got here, so it was still being a new staff sergeant with a new, working at a headquarters with a new baby and another son and a wife going to school. There's lots of stress and stuff that I was learning to deal with. And I noticed about the end of October of 2013 that I started to have some symptoms again, like my anger would jump from a 0 to an 8 or a 0 to a 9, and I would just get angry at the drop of a hat and wanted to punch a wall or destroy something. So I knew this wasn't who I should be, and that I didn't want to fall back into the old habits that I had before, so I went and talked to mental health care again and was diagnosed with anxiety. I am doing a lot better. It's still tough now and then, but one of the things that has helped me the most is they call it SSgt. It's stop, slow down, think, and act. I actually used it earlier on my way over here because you get all anxious and even have a couple panic attacks, but telling myself to stop, slow down, take a breath, think about what's going on, and then acting has helped tremendously with working at headquarters and in life in general. I still have symptoms of PTSD and anxiety at times, like the wavering tone still gets me 4 years later if I don't hear that they're doing a test and the wavering tone goes off. Right as soon as the first couple seconds of that alarm goes off, my heart starts racing. I feel like something bad's about to happen. I almost hit the dirt, but then I stop myself and I realize that there's no dirt on the floor. I'm in a safe place. In Colorado. It's cold. It's not hot like Afghanistan. It's okay. But one of the things that I've gotten from mental health is a challenging belief worksheet that helps tremendously as well. It's a whole bunch of different questions of ways to challenge the different thoughts that are unhelpful. And so I'm able to control my thoughts instead of allowing my thoughts to control me. Something else that's helped a lot is not judging myself, because for the longest time I would tell myself that there's something wrong with me. I need to get back to the point where I was before I deployed. But realizing that the person that I was before I deployed, I can never get back to, and that we're always in a constant change, and that we have to learn what our new normal is and learn to accept ourselves is a big thing for me. Also, I've definitely learned a daily reliance on God. Whenever I'm walking into building 1, I always say, all right, God, it's another day. I need you every single second of every day, whether I think I've got it or not. I know that I need you, and I can't do this without you. I have learned that I'm not weak for getting help. Everybody gets help. I was even talking with one of the guys that I worked with this morning before heading over here, that he was in the Gulf War, and when he got back, he even went to mental health to get help with some issues that he was having. I also learned that going to mental health will not ruin your career or lose your clearance, because I still have my top secret clearance. But the most important thing is that if you're having any kind of issue, whether it's anger or anxiety or just you don't feel like your normal self, you're not alone. There's people around you feeling the exact same way or have gotten help and can help you. So just reach out to people. My goal of telling my story today is to start to break down the stigma of mental health and PTSD. One of the things that I really enjoy from being on Facebook is this site called Military Experience in the Arts. They have a thing that says, having PTSD doesn't mean you're broken. It merely means you're put to the test and did not fall apart. So thank you for listening to my story. Hopefully it had some impact on some of you, and to keep an eye out on the people around you, and that we all need help sometime, and you're not alone in the fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Montgomery. As a medic, I'm really happy that we were able to help, and I'm really proud that you came forward today to share your story, because a lot of us have deployed, a lot of us have experienced similar things, and you're inspiring to us to seek help, so thank you very much.